You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter @RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, except no imitation. Usually, I like to save my eulogies for the end. I think that's the best way to do it more often than not, like with what I did yesterday with Bruce Davis. Can't do that here. There are some deaths that are the lead story. That only happens if a transcendent figure dies. It's hard to find anyone more transcendent than John Madden, who died yesterday at the age of 85, suddenly. John Madden transcended the NFL. He transcended football. For as long as EA Sports holds the NFL video game license, John Madden will be a permanent fixture in the American consciousness. Say what you want about the quality of recent Madden games, but every year in late August, when the game comes out, people run to buy them. I mean, there have been many a days and many a nights where I have done nothing but just play Madden, because it is the only way that I will see the Jets win the Lombardi Trophy. John Madden is one of the most important people in football history. You think about the most influential people in football history. You think of guys like Pete Rozelle, Al Davis, Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, Robert Kraft, Vince Lombardi, Tom Landry, Wellington Mara, Curly Lambeau, George Halas, Jim Thorpe. John Madden is right up there with those guys. He built a dynasty as a head coach. And yeah, I'd consider those Raiders teams a dynasty. I don't care that they only won one Super Bowl. The Bills of the late 80s to early 90s are a dynasty. They didn't win any. Maybe it's not one of the greatest dynasties in NFL history, but still, it's a dynasty. He built that. He had a remarkable career as a broadcaster. Him and Pat Summerall made magic together every week. And obviously what he did with the Madden NFL games can't be overstated. Obviously, it's EA Sports writing the source code and making sure the game functions properly. And again, we can argue whether or not they've done that later, but the point is, John Madden, at the beginning of his journey with EA, pushed for realism. I'll get into that a little bit later, but because of John Madden's push for a realistic football game that could teach and entertain people, Madden NFL never happened. John Madden was in the public consciousness from 1969 to 2021. That spans 4 generations. Gen X, Millennials, Gen Z, and Gen Alpha. Gen X knew him as a great coach. Millennials and Gen Z knew him as a great broadcaster. Gen Alpha knew him as the namesake of one of the most dominant video game franchises of all time. So this guy dominated in 3 different aspects of the NFL. How many people have done that? How many people have dominated in 3 aspects of the same business? Forget football. It could be any business. It's hard enough to be great in 1 aspect. Madden was great in 3. There is no question about it. John Madden is one of the most important people in the history of football. Madden actually could have been a player. He was drafted by the Eagles in 1958 in the 21st round. But he blew out his knee. That ended his career, and it prompted him to earn his BS and MA in education. Keep that in mind, that Madden had 2 degrees in education. Madden worked his way up through the ranks before eventually landing with the Oakland Raiders as their linebackers coach. When John Roush left to take over the Bills, Al Davis made Madden the youngest head coach in football history. Madden was with the Raiders for 10 years. In all of those years, the Raiders had a winning record. In only 2 of those years did the Raiders miss the playoffs. John Madden has the 2nd best winning percentage in NFL history among qualified head coaches. First is Guy Chamberlain, who coached from 1922 to 1927. And among all head coaches with at least 82 games coached, with at least 100 wins to their name, Madden has the best winning percentage in NFL history. In the last year of the AFL, the Raiders went 12-1-1. Everyone expected them to represent the AFL in the Super Bowl. especially after they destroyed the Oilers 56-7. But the Chiefs were able to pull off the upset. They won 17-7. They won the AFL championship. Darryl LaMonica threw 3 interceptions. No Gloucester Richardson this time. Just guys like Emmett Thomas, Jim Kearney, Jim Marsalis, and Aaron Brown. In the first year of the Raiders' time in the NFL, the Raiders won the AFC West. They went 8-4-2. They beat the Dolphins in the divisional round 21-14, but then they lost to the Colts 27-17 in the AFC title game. In 1972, the Raiders went 10-3-1. They would travel to Three Rivers Stadium to play the Pittsburgh Steelers. The game was scoreless through the first half. The Steelers scored the first 6 points of the game because of 2 Roy Gorella field goals. The Raiders really couldn't get anything going. Darryl LaMonica threw 2 interceptions. He was benched for Ken Stabler. Stabler lost a fumble. That gave the Steelers the ball for Gorella's second field goal. But Stabler was able to rally the troops to give the Raiders a 7-6 lead with 77 seconds left in the game. The Steelers were able to drive down the field a little bit, but then they faced 4th and 10 at their own 40-yard line. 22 seconds left in the game, no timeouts. What happened next is one of the most controversial plays in NFL history. And in case it wasn't clear, I'm talking about the Immaculate Reception. Bradshaw dropped back. He was under pressure by the Raiders' 3-man rush. The Steelers' O-line just collapsed. And Bradshaw threw a prayer to Frenchie Fuqua. Jack Tatum collided with Fuqua just as the ball was arriving. Fuqua hits the deck because, of course he does. That's what happens when you get hit by Jack Tatum. There's a reason that they called him the assassin. The Raiders think the play is over. Right before the ball hit the ground, Franco Harris caught the ball and ran down the left sideline for the eventual game-winning touchdown. The Raiders won 13-7. Why is that play controversial? Under the rules at the time, once an offensive player touched the pass, he was the only guy who could catch it. So if the ball had hit Fuqua in the hands and Tatum jarred the ball loose, and the ball went up in the air and Franco Harris caught it, that is an illegal reception. the Raiders would have won the game. If the ball hit Tatum, or Fuqua and Tatum, or Tatum and Fuqua, the catch is legal. To this day, it's not 100% sure who that ball hit first, and if Jack Tatum ever touched it. The prevailing theory is that the referees got the call right, that Tatum did touch the ball at one point. There's really no question whether Franco Harris caught the ball before it hit the ground. He did. The controversy has always been who touched that football. I mean, it got to the point where physicists actually got involved. Like I said, the prevailing theory is that the referees got the call right. Will we ever know for sure? Probably not. I mean, nowadays we'd have cameras from every angle, so we know who it hit first. Obviously, under current rules, it's a catch, but if the rule was still in place, and that play had happened today, we'd know for sure who it hit. Now, that loss actually started the Ken Stabler era. Stabler spent his first few years as a backup to Darryl LaMonica. In '73, he became the starting quarterback of the Raiders. In Stabler's first 3 years as Raiders starting quarterback, the Raiders made the AFC title game every year. They just couldn't win it. In '73, they lost to the Dolphins 27-10. In '74, they lost to the Steelers 24-13. And in '75, they lost to the Steelers 16-10. '74 is worth going a little more in depth on, though. In the divisional round, the Raiders were going up against the Dolphins. The Dolphins at this point had been to 3 straight Super Bowls, winning 2. Obviously, they had the perfect season a couple years prior. Those Dolphins teams were insane. The Raiders were down 26-21 with 2 minutes left to go in the game. It was really a back and forth affair. Both teams had the lead at certain points. You had a sense that it would come down to whoever had the football last. The Raiders had the ball at the Dolphins' 8-yard line. Stabler was trying to evade pressure from Dolphins defensive end Vern Den Herter, but Stabler did go to the ground. Before he went to the ground, though, he flicked the ball up into the end zone where there was only one Raider, Clarence Davis, and 3 Dolphins defenders. For whatever it's worth, the 3 defenders were Charlie Babb, Larry Ball, and Mike Colon. Somehow, some way, Davis was able to catch that football. And even more impressively, he was able to hang on to the football even though Manny Fernandez came out of nowhere and laid an incredibly dirty hit on Davis. The Raiders would win that game 28-26. It is known today as the Sea of Hands. After the 75 season, the Raiders gained a reputation as being a very good team, but one that was incapable of winning their last game of the season. Oh, how foolish those people looked in 1976. The Raiders went 13-1. Their only loss came to the New England Patriots, who they got revenge on in the divisional round by beating 24-21. They destroyed the Steelers in the AFC title game 24-7. Then they destroyed the Vikings in Super Bowl 11, 32-14. The year after that, the Raiders were involved in another iconic play. But this was one that they benefited from. They went 11-3. They went up against the Colts in the divisional round. It was an excellent game, a back-and-forth affair. The first half was all defense. The second half was all offense. With just under 3 minutes left to go in the game, the Colts had a 31-28 lead. It was 2nd and 10 with 2:17 left to go in the game. Stabler pumped, then threw an absolute bomb to Dave Casper, who was nicknamed the Ghost because of Casper the Friendly Ghost. Stabler placed the ball in such a way that Casper had to adjust his route to catch it. I mean, the ball was a little overthrown. Casper really had to turn on the jets for it. He made an incredible over-the-head catch. If you've ever seen the Willie Mays catch off Vic Wertz in the 1954 World Series in the Polo Grounds, it looks similar to that. It got the Raiders into the red zone. They ended up kicking a game-tying field goal. Then in double overtime, Stabler found Casper again for a 10-yard touchdown pass. The Raiders won 37-31. The play that got the Raiders into field goal range, the epic Casper catch, has been immortalized as Ghost to the Post. Unfortunately for the Raiders, the game after that, they lost to the Broncos 22-17. They played like garbage for 3 quarters. They tried to come back in the 4th quarter. They just couldn't pull it out. The year after that, the Raiders missed the playoffs, but there was an iconic moment that came from that season. In week 2, the Raiders were in San Diego to face the Chargers. With 10 seconds left, the Chargers were up 22-14. The ball is at the Chargers' 15-yard line. Stabler drops back and almost immediately is in the grasp of Chargers linebacker Woodrow Lowe. The ball came out of Stabler's hands. It ended up in the hands of Pete Banaszak, a Raiders running back. Banaszak couldn't keep his footing, so he ended up pitching the ball forward to Dave Casper. Casper initially couldn't handle it. Then he fell on the ball in the end zone, and the referees called a touchdown. Now, there are two issues with this play. Did Ken Stabler throw a forward pass? If he didn't, did he intentionally fumble the ball forward? Under the rules at the time, if he did, it's a forward pass and the game is over. So if Pete Banaszak had intentionally fumbled the ball forward, that would have been considered a forward pass. The Chargers probably would have won the game. And this wasn't some meaningless regular season game. The Chargers ended up finishing that season with a 9-7 record. They finished one game behind the Oilers for the second wildcard spot in the AFC. If the Chargers had won that game, they would have made the playoffs over the Oilers. They had the tiebreaker. In case you're wondering what the Oilers did that year in the playoffs, they made it all the way to the AFC title game where they got creamed by the Steelers 34-5. So that could have been the Chargers. I mean, that was Don Coryell's first year as Chargers head coach. Who knows what would have happened? I'll say this. The rule in place at the time was incredibly stupid. If a runner intentionally fumbles forward, it's a forward pass. How do you know whether he intentionally fumbled forward? What player is going to say to you, yeah, I meant to fumble that ball forward, if he knows it's going to take a touchdown off the board? Let me tell you, I've watched this play 100 times. To this day, I think Stabler threw a forward pass, thus rendering what Banaszak did irrelevant. But even then, there's no way that Banaszak unintentionally fumbled that ball forward. Just watch the play for yourself. The guy gathers the ball and basically pitches it forward. The Raiders should not have won that game. For 50 years, the Chargers have had a legitimate gripe. Madden retired after the 78 season. He had bad ulcers. He kind of got burned out mentally. Even though he retired early, he still has the most wins in Raiders history by a head coach. I don't think that record's going to be broken anytime soon. After that, Madden got into broadcasting. He started with CBS. It took Madden a couple years, but by 1981, he had worked his way up to the top broadcasting job on CBS, where he'd be paired with Pat Summerall, and the two of them would begin a partnership that would last for 20 seasons. For the older generation of football fans that grew up with Madden and Summerall, it's very easy to understand why they don't like any of the current broadcasters. None of the current pairs, whether it's Nance and Romo, Aikman and Buck, Michaels and Collinsworth, can hold a candle to Summerall and Madden. Those guys called 8 Super Bowls together. Madden ended up winning 16 Emmys. It's because of his excellent broadcasting career that he was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2006. And Madden worked for all the major networks. Obviously, he worked for CBS. Then when CBS lost the rights to the NFL, Madden and Summerall jumped to Fox Sports. Summerall retired after the 2001 season. Madden went to Monday Night Football in 2002, which was on ABC at the time. He was paired with Al Michaels. Then from 2006 to 2008, after Monday Night Football moved to ESPN, Madden went to Sunday Night Football, which has always been on NBC, once again being paired with Al Michaels. Just think about it for a minute. Pat Summerall and John Madden, and Al Michaels and John Madden. 2 of the best broadcasting duos of all time, for any sport. The thing that made Madden great was his ability to explain the nuances of football to the casual fan. I mean, he was the first person to use the telestrator, which is the tool that enables people to write on a television screen for everyone to see. He made complex football plays very easy to understand. That's my issue with Louis Riddick. Louis Riddick is a very smart guy, and the guy has forgotten more about football than I'll ever know. But you don't need to always show off the fact that you know more about football than everyone else. Dumb it down a little bit. Stop using so many fancy terms that no one knows. You don't need to always prove that you're the smartest guy in the room. The best color commentators explain the game in a way that everyone can understand it. Not everyone watching a sporting event is a diehard fan. Casual sports fans watch sports too. One of the things that great color commentators do is they make the sport that they're covering easily understandable for everyone. It's what Tony Romo does, and it's what John Madden did. Remember I told you about his 2 degrees in education? He always thought that it was his job to educate people about football. And that's why he was the perfect guy to lend his name to the video game that would eventually be Madden NFL. The founder of EA is a man by the name of Trip Hawkins. Hawkins wanted to make computerized football games. he knew that he needed a pitchman for it. Joe Montana said no. Joe Kapp said no. John Madden said yes. One thing that Madden did from the get-go was insist on realism. The initial plans of Madden was to have 6-on-6 football or 7-on-7 football. Madden wanted his video game to be as realistic as possible. Madden signed on in 1984. The first Madden game came out in 1988. So that's a 4-year period where EA is pouring money into something that they have nothing to show for. A lot of people wanted Trip Hawkins to just forget about Madden football. It wasn't going to work. But Hawkins stuck with it, and he created one of the greatest franchises in video game history. Say what you want about the current state of the Madden franchise, but there's no question that if you play it enough, you'll learn certain concepts about football. The difference between man defense and zone defense. How to read a defense. When the quarterback should change the play at the line of scrimmage. What the best plays are for any given down and distance. I'll tell you right now, playing Madden for as long as I've played it has made me a smarter football fan. I'll be completely honest about that. I don't remember the first Madden game I ever played. I think it was Madden 06. I remember getting it for the first time. It was for my PC. And I played it religiously. I still play Madden. I play video games. I'm the kind of video game player where I go through cycles with the video games that I play. Like, I zone in on one game, and that's the game I play for a while, and then it changes, and then it changes again. Right now, I'm in a Madden cycle. Do I have issues with the game? Of course, it's not a perfect game. EA Sports really needs to pay attention to modes other than Ultimate Team. Although you can understand it from a business standpoint, since that's the mode that makes them the most money. Is it unfair to the people that don't play MUT? No question. I don't play MUT. I feel like I'm being left out. But again, from a business perspective, you can sorta kinda understand it. But any criticism that you give EA Sports for failing to support the other modes of Madden like they do Ultimate Team is fair. There's no question about that. John Madden was involved in some of the most iconic moments in football history. From the Immaculate Reception to the Sea of Hands to Ghost to the Post to the Holy Roller to making Magic with Pat Summerall to making Magic with Al Michaels to lending his name to a video game franchise that has been going strong for over 30 years. I mean, truthfully, I spent more time on this than I thought I would, but you know what? It's fair. That's the kind of legacy that John Madden has. From the bottom of my heart, I sincerely hope that he rests in peace. Alright, now I'll give you some college football Valk talk. And I'll start by breaking down the Birmingham Bowl. Houston narrowly beating Auburn 17-13. What an incredibly exciting game. It looks like Houston's going to run away with it early. They're up 10-3 in the first half. Then Auburn comes storming back. Then Clayton Tune throws the game-winning touchdown with 3.5 minutes left. Just an absolutely great game. I mean, I don't want to say that Tune's touchdown pass to Jake Herslow is an iconic moment. Like it's up there with what Tua did against Georgia, or what Vince Young did against USC, or the band is out on the field, or something like that. But that touchdown pass is probably one of the best moments of the bowl season so far. I mean, Tune was really, really good. Completed 26 of his 40 passes for 283 yards and 2 touchdowns. He did throw an interception, but ultimately that didn't come back to haunt the Cougars. And he was playing against a really good Auburn defense. Like, I thought the Tigers were really good defensively. I thought Colby Wooden was excellent. Smoke Monday was really good before he was ejected because of a targeting call. And here's what I'll say about that. I do not think that was targeting. I understand that he may have led with the crown of the helmet, and that's what we're trying to get out of the game. But he was also putting his hands out. You know, he's trying to block for Nehemiah Pritchett, who had just gotten the interception. By the letter of the law, I guess that's targeting, but look, we've got to give these referees the latitude to say whether or not it was intentional. That's the main thing that we should be trying to get at. The intentional act of leading with the helmet for, like, no good reason. And at the end of the day, I didn't mind what Monday did. Yes, he led with the crown of the helmet. I understand that. But he did put his hands out also. He's trying to block for his guy. And also, the receiver got up, like, right after that and tried to back body drop someone. That does mean something. I didn't like seeing Monday's Auburn career end like that. Because he's had a really good career. But all in all, Tune was excellent. Alton McCaskill was solid. 14 carries for 78 yards. He also had 4 catches for 15 yards and a touchdown. He did his thing. Nathaniel Dell had 10 catches for 150 yards. He was really good. The big issue with Auburn was their terrible quarterback play. TJ Finley completed just 19 of 37 passes. There were a lot of drives that looked promising that stalled out. At the end of the day, you've got to score more than 13 points if you expect to win. There's only so much that Tank Bigsby can do. I felt bad for him. Here's a guy who had over 160 scrimmage yards, but his quarterback isn't helping him out. If Auburn had better quarterback play, like if Bo Nix played like the player that we all thought he could, Auburn would have won this game. But they were forced to start TJ Finley, who really isn't that good, and that's why Houston won. But this was a great game. Moving on now to the First Responder Bowl. Louisville versus Air Force. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I would see Air Force air the ball out the way they did yesterday. Just to put it into perspective, Hazik Daniels had only thrown 94 passes the whole season. They were a ground and pound team. They had 9 guys with over 100 rushing yards. They had 11 guys with at least 1 rushing touchdown. But what teams tend to do in bowl games is throw a curveball. Everyone's expecting us to run it. Everyone's expecting us to try to kill you with ground and pound. Great. Hazik Daniels, show off your arm. And boy, oh boy, did he. He completed 9 of 10 passes for 252 yards and 2 touchdowns. That is a yards per attempt of over 25. He also added 2 rushing touchdowns. This was the best performance by any player this bowl season. I mean, give Brandon Lewis credit. He had 5 catches for 172 yards and 2 touchdowns. But the real story here is Daniels. I mean, the Cardinals had their opportunities. They played well enough to win. Malik Cunningham was really good. Completed just under 2/3 of his passes for 207 yards and a touchdown. He also ran for another touchdown. Travion Cooley had 18 carries for 92 yards and a touchdown. Tyler Harrell had 4 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown. There were 2 big moments in this game. The first was the 44-yard field goal that James Turner missed. That would have given the Cardinals the first lead of the game, and it would have resulted in the game going to overtime. Air Force won 31-28. You tack on a field goal, the game goes into overtime. But there was another play. 4 minutes left in the third quarter. The Falcons are up 28-14. They have 4th and goal at the 2. I don't begrudge Scott Satterfield for going for it at all. Travion Cooley needs to punch it in there. He just failed. And he said as much after the game. You know what? He was 100% right. I'll tell you one other thing that really impressed me. Air Force's offensive line. Here's an O-line that hasn't been asked to pass block basically all year. Air Force as a team only attempted 102 passes. But the O-line really showed up and played great. Everyone, Adam Karras, Isaac Cochran, Thor Paglialong, Hawk Wimmer, and Caleb Holcomb were all really, really good. It's so hard if you're an O-lineman to get so used to run blocking, and then your head coach, Troy Calhoun, says, we're gonna throw the ball more in this game. I mean, it's not like they aired the ball out a ton. Daniels only attempted 10 passes. He had more rushes than pass attempts, but still. That's more than he usually throws. Give the O-line a ton of credit. Moving on now to the Liberty Bowl, a game that I completely whiffed on. I did not like Texas Tech this year. I thought they were a really bad football team. I thought Will Rogers would have his way with the Red Raiders defense. Holy moly, was I wrong. Texas Tech looked like a team possessed. Their defense was absolutely outstanding. They forced 3 Mississippi State turnovers. The Bulldogs only had 54 rushing yards yesterday. This was a rout. This was a joke. It looked like Mississippi State just expected to win this game. Like, they didn't need to put in any effort. They'd win this game without breaking a sweat. And it's okay to be confident in yourself. Look, I thought Mississippi State would run away with this game. But for goodness sake, you still need to respect the team that you're playing. The Bulldogs looked absolutely dead to the world. They made the Red Raiders look a lot better than they actually are. Donovan Smith had a really good game. He was responsible for 2 touchdowns. Taj Brooks and Sir Roderick Thompson both had at least 80 rushing yards. They both had a touchdown. This was a joke. This was a rout. This was the game that you took a nap during so you'd be able to stay up for the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. But before I get into that, I want to talk about the Holiday Bowl being postponed. UCLA had to bow out 4 hours before kickoff because they have a COVID outbreak. NC State and the organizers of the Holiday Bowl are saying that they're going to try to find a replacement team and have the bowl game a little later. How is that going to happen? You've got to get hotel rooms. You've got to deal with staff. You've got to deal with keeping the field in good condition. Hopefully there's nothing else going on at Petco Park. I don't know what else would be going on, but maybe there's a concert or something. I don't foresee the Holiday Bowl happening. So this will be the 5th bowl game that was canceled this year, along with the Hawaii Bowl, the Military Bowl, the Fenway Bowl, and the Arizona Bowl. The Sun Bowl and Gator Bowl were affected, but at least they were able to find replacement opponents. Rutgers volunteered to get their doors blown off by Wake Forest in the Gator Bowl, and Central Michigan moved from the Arizona Bowl to the Sun Bowl. they will play Washington State. Look, I don't want to criticize the NCAA for having draconian COVID protocols, for not being in line with updated CDC guidelines. Like, I can understand wanting to err on the side of caution. I mean, give the NCAA credit. They've canceled 4 or 5 games that would have made them money because they were incredibly cautious with the health of the student athletes. There's no right way to deal with the coronavirus. At the end of the day, I'm not a doctor. I'm not up to date on the latest research into this. I'm not comfortable saying much. Like, one of my friends wanted me to talk about the NFL or the NBA, I don't remember who, it may have been the NHL, one of the leagues updating their COVID protocols. It's like, okay, great, fantastic. What do you want me to say about it? Want me to give an opinion on it? I can't do that. I'm not qualified to give an opinion on it. I'm qualified to give an opinion on sports because I'm a huge sports fan. And I'd like to think that I convey my opinions in a clear, cogent, and intelligent way. I can't do that about medicine. That's been my whole point with people like Aaron Rodgers. People who spout misinformation about the coronavirus when they're not scientists. I understand having a healthy skepticism of things. That's okay. But if scientific consensus is you should do this, that, and the other, I think you should do this, that, and the other. Can scientific consensus be wrong? Of course. But more often than not, it's right. Look, I feel bad for the non-COVID affected schools. The schools like Memphis and NC State, and even Central Michigan. You're preparing for Boise State, then without a lot of notice, you have to face Washington State. You're in Arizona, you've got to get to El Paso. I mean, I understand that Washington State was preparing for Miami. They have a new opponent too, but at least they were in El Paso. Central Michigan was in Arizona. It's just a tall ask for these kids. The one thing that I'll say is that maybe they should have stayed in their hotel rooms. Like, when I was in Florida, I was staying at Universal. I was staying at the Portofino. You know who else was there? The Coastal Carolina Chanticleers. They were out and about, eating, enjoying Universal. And they had every right to do that. But at the same time, it's risky. Maybe, just maybe, you catch COVID. Now, I understand that if you're gonna fly these kids to City X, you can't say to them, you have to stay here for however long and don't go outside, don't mingle, don't do anything. You're prisoners in the hotel. Well, wait a second. If the city that I'm in is open for business, like most of the country is, that's an unfair ask. Like, the only thing that could have been done to ensure that these bowl games happened would have been to make sure the teams didn't leave the hotel. Don't let them enjoy the city that they're in. But the players wouldn't have liked that. I understand that they don't have a union, there's not much they can do, but that would have been really, really tough. So, this is just the nature of the beast. We've seen NHL games postponed. We've seen NBA games postponed. We saw some NFL games get postponed. Unfortunately, with college football nearing the end of its season, they can't push these games back. It's sad. I feel really bad for these kids. Moving on now to the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. WVU losing to Minnesota 18-6. Yes, this game was as bad as the score would indicate. WVU could get nothing going all night. They were 3 for 13 on third downs. They only had 206 total yards. Jarrett Dagey, whose name I butchered yesterday, like I said, everyone should be named John Smith, was sacked 5 times. I praised the WVU O-line yesterday. I said it was a good O-line, and it usually is. But boy, oh boy, that was an inexcusable performance by the Mountaineers. Terrible job by everyone. Minnesota ran roughshod over the Mountaineers like I said they would. Give Kai Thomas credit. He had 21 carries for 144 yards and a touchdown. Marquise Irving had 19 carries for 129 yards. They even let the big O-lineman, Daniel Faalele, the 6'9", 380-pound beast, push the ball in from 2 yards out. Yeah, who's getting in the way of that Mack truck? No one. Give Minnesota credit. I knew they'd win this game. And I'm telling you, they're going to be a really good team next year. I don't want to say that they're going to be a CFP threat, but look at what happened to them this year. Look at their 4 losses. They lost to OSU to start out the season. No shame in that. They lost to Bowling Green. An absolutely inexcusable loss. Bowling Green was dreadful this year. They went 4-8. They went 2-6 in the MAC. You can't lose that game. They lost to Illinois. You can't lose to Illinois. You're better than the Illini. And you lost a close game to Iowa. That's a game you would have liked to have won, although Iowa was a really good team. So look, you take the fluky Bowling Green loss out of the equation, and you know that they're better than Illinois. Minnesota easily could have been an 11-win team. They've got a lot of players coming back. It would not stun me if Minnesota was playing in a New Year's Six Bowl next year. That's how high I am on these guys. Alright, now it's time to preview today's 3 games. I'll start with the local game for me, the Pinstripe Bowl. Maryland versus Virginia Tech. Because nothing gets the few New York college football fans excited like the Terrapins going up against the Hokies. I really liked Maryland entering this year, I thought they'd be a sleeper team. They have Talia Tagovailoa, Tua's brother. With him starting a full season, I really thought the Terrapins would be really good. And look, Tagovailoa had a good year. He completed over 68% of his passes for just under 3,600 yards, 24 touchdowns to 11 picks. They started the season 4-0. Then they went 2-6 the rest of the way. Their only wins came against a dreadful Indiana team, and even then they only won by 3, and a Rutgers team that really shouldn't be in a bowl game. I mean, I like Mike Locksley. I think he's a very good recruiter. But, wow, did Maryland disappoint this year. This is a one-man team. It's very rare that one-man teams do anything in college football. As great as guys like Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, and Bryce Young are, they have great players helping him out. Tagovailoa doesn't have that. Even on defense, there's only one good Terrapin. Jordan Mosley. That's it. This is not a good Terrapins team. I really hope they take a step forward next year for Tagovailoa's sake. Having said that, though, Virginia Tech isn't much better. They fired Justin Fuente. The Hokies really didn't get good quarterback play from anyone. Braxton Burmeister was obviously their best quarterback, but he's now in the transfer portal. No big loss, but still, you don't want to enter a bowl game with a backup quarterback. Raheem Blackshear was really expected to take a big step forward this year. He didn't. He only had 711 rushing yards and 6 touchdowns. I like the Hokies O-line. They have a very good O-line. They just don't have an offense that can take advantage of that. I do like the Hokies defense, though. Jordan Williams, Amari Barno, Norrell Pollard, Tay Daly, Armani Chapman, Taiwan Garbutt, Dorian Strong, and Shamari Connor are good players. This is going to be a low-scoring game. It's going to be a tough game to get into, but it will be close. The over-under is 54.5. Take the under. Give me the Hokies. Their defense will do enough to win this game. Moving on now to the Cheez-It Bowl. We've got ISU taking on Clemson. Two very disappointing teams. A lot of people expected both these teams to be in a New Year's Six Bowl. I mean, ISU has Brock Purdy and Breece Hall and Xavier Hutchinson and Charlie Kohler. And Clemson has DJ Uiagalelei. He's going to pick up right where Trevor Lawrence left off. Dabo Sweeney's team isn't going to miss a beat. Both these teams were really bad. Iowa State went 7-5. Clemson went 9-3. The only reason that Clemson finished with 9 wins is because their defense is absolutely incredible. Outside of Georgia's defense, it is the best defense in the nation in terms of opposing points per game. they gave up just 15 points per game this year. Not for nothing. If your defense is giving up 15 points per game, if the most points that you have given up this year was 27, you really shouldn't have 3 losses. I understand that one of those losses was to Georgia. Alright, I get that, but still, you had a chance to win that game. You lost 10-3. DJ has to be better than that. You lost to NC State. NC State was a good team this year, but this is Clemson we're talking about. You've got to beat them. You lost to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was a really good team this year, but again, this is Clemson. This is a team that has finished with double-digit wins every year since 2011. This is by far and away the worst Clemson team since Dabo Swinney's second year. But I haven't forgotten about ISU, Mr. Matt Campbell, Mr. NFL head coaching candidate. You want teams to look at you as an NFL head coach? You can't go 7-5. I understand that you lost to good teams, with the exception of Texas Tech. I don't think Texas Tech is a good team. And WVU isn't great. Your other losses came against Iowa, Baylor, and Oklahoma. No shame there. But it is perfectly reasonable to want a team that's looking to take that next step to steal a game or two against superior teams. That's what Texas Tech just did. Instead, you just waste the great year by Breece Hall. You waste the really good years by Xavier Hutchinson and Charlie Kolar. Brock Purdy had a disappointing year. He threw for under 3,000 yards. It's tough to get into this game. It's tough to get into a game where you have 2 underachieving teams going at it. You've got 2 decent teams going at it in the Pinstripe Bowl. And you have 2 disappointing teams going at it in the Cheez-It Bowl. Look, it wouldn't surprise me if Iowa State won, but I have to give respect to Clemson's defense. I've got to give respect to guys like R.J. Mickens, Mario Goodrich, Andrew Booth Jr., Andrew Makuba, Miles Murphy, Xavier Thomas, Trenton Simpson, and guys like that. Also, Breece Hall isn't playing. He's preparing for the NFL draft, so there goes Iowa State's best player. Good luck filling those shoes, Jarrell Brock. Clemson's going to win this game, but it's going to be a really tough game to watch. The last game today won't be a tough game to watch. Oregon versus Oklahoma. 2 top 16 teams going at it in the Alamo Bowl. Obviously, this is going to be a tough game for the Ducks because Mario Cristobal isn't there. Brian McClendon's going to coach this game. Cristobal obviously went to the U. So, in comes McClendon. The Ducks have a decent quarterback in Anthony Brown. He completed just under 64% of his passes for just under 2,700 yards. 16 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. He's not bad. He's not great, but he's not bad. But the key player on the Ducks offense is Travis Dye. Dye took over after C.J. Verdell's injury and really set the world on fire. He had over 1,100 rushing yards and 15 touchdowns. Give him a ton of credit. Defensively, when you think of Oregon, you probably think of Kayvon Thibodeau, and that's okay. I mean, Thibodeau is going to be a fantastic player in the NFL. Put together 3 great seasons at Oregon. Got better and better each year. On Mel Kiper's latest big board, he has Thibodeau second, behind only Aiden Hutchinson of Michigan. I'll say this, what Hutchinson does against Georgia is going to go a long way towards determining who is the best player in this draft. It is a 2-man race between Hutchinson and Thibodeau. That doesn't mean that this is a 2-man draft class, but I think it's clear that Thibodeau and Hutchinson are better than everyone else. I mean, without him, the Ducks' defense obviously takes a huge hit. But it's still really good. They have Popo Almave, Brandon Dorless, Noah Sewell, DJ James, Masai Funa, Verone McKinley III. This is a really good Ducks team. Meanwhile, you look at the Sooners, their coach, Lincoln Riley, obviously left for USC. Who's coaching Oklahoma in this game? Bob Stoops. The best interim head coach you could possibly get. You gotta love it. Caleb Williams took over for Spencer Rattler and didn't set the world on fire. I wouldn't say that he was exponentially better than Rattler, but he looked solid. He completed just under 63% of his passes for just under 1,700 yards. 18 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. He's a good quarterback. I have nothing against him. But the best player on the Sooners offense is Kennedy Brooks. Brooks had over 1,100 rushing yards this year and 10 touchdowns. He didn't play last year because of COVID concerns. He opted out. But every year that Kennedy Brooks has been a Sooner, he has had over 1,000 rushing yards. I think he can be a really good player in the NFL. Like with a day 3 pick, I would definitely take Brooks. I understand that Oklahoma's O-line is really good this year, but still, it takes skill to rush for over 1,000 yards in 3 seasons. But Oklahoma's O-line is great. One of the best in the nation. Anton Harrison, Marquise Hayes, Andrew Rame, Chris Murray, and Tyrese Robinson form an incredible unit. Defensively, you've got to look out for Nick Benito. He is by far and away the best Sooners player on defense. They also have Isaiah Thomas, Brian Asamoah, Key Lawrence, Justin Broyles. This is a good Oklahoma defense. All in all, I think the Sooners have a little bit more firepower. I like Brooks more than I like Dye. I like Williams more than I like Brown. I like the Sooners' defense a lot more than the Ducks' defense without Thibodeau. It wouldn't stun me if Oregon won, but I'm going to go with Oklahoma. Until tomorrow, I'm Jacob Valk, and always remember, if you disagree with me, you're wrong.